With me now, the UKIP leader, Nigel Farage. What, in your view, should our response be to the events in Tunisia in particular, but the unfolding attacks from Islamic State elsewhere?
Well, my main concern is here. My main concern is protecting ourselves as much as we possibly can against such atrocities happening on mainland Britain. I think we have to say that our security services are currently arresting one suspected terrorist every day. Clearly, they're doing a very, very good job. And they need to, because we've got 300 people here who've been to Syria, who fought with IS, who've been brutalised by that process. But my concern is, and nobody wants to talk about this, you know, the 160,000 people so far this year have crossed the Mediterranean and landed in Italy and in Greece. The EU is now implementing a common EU asylum policy. The criteria for it are so wide that it actually means that anybody that comes from Africa can stay. We've already seen photographic evidence in one of those boats going into Sicily of a man who was a suspect for the first Tunisian outrage when 22 people were killed at the museum. And IS themselves are saying they will use this as an opportunity to flood Europe with jihadists.
So what should we do?
What we should do, firstly, is say to Mr. Juncker and the rest of Europe, you are making a dreadful mistake. What you ought to do is what the Australians did in 2008 when they faced the same problem with large numbers of migrants coming across the oceans and, you know, boats sinking and people drowning, and the Australians said, I'm sorry, you will not make your home in Australia, and the people stopped coming. That's the first thing we should do. And the second thing is we get this complacency from the British government and the Foreign Office. Oh, it's okay, we're opted out of the common asylum policy. You saw in Calais this week that actually the numbers in Calais are being fed by what is happening in the Mediterranean, that people can get to Britain illegally. But what I really suspect is going to happen is Mr. Renzi, the Italian Prime Minister, he's losing his patience because the northern countries aren't helping with burden sharing. All he has to do is give all of those people an EU passport. They can then all come to Britain. And I think that for us to potentially be adding to the number of jihadists that live in our country is madness.
But there's a lot we could do, even inside the European Union, to be tougher on the border, is there not?
Well, the European Union has huge borders, and the European Union has a policy which says that anybody that comes will be accepted. Now, we could...
Well, that's your interpretation.
Well, if you look at the definitions of who actually qualifies, anybody from a war-torn country qualifies. Just look at the region.
But we can still control, if we wish to, who comes into the country.
Not if they got EU passports, no, absolutely not. And it's clear to me that for the Italians, this is now their only way out. The Juncker plan of burden sharing is finished.
If we felt that Renzi was issuing passports like that for that reason, no British government could stand by and accept these passports.
Well, this gets us actually straight to the fundamental point of the so-called renegotiation, which I think rather fell at the first hurdle at the summit this week. Actually, maybe in a way, what has happened in Tunisia and all these awful events, maybe in a way this gets us to the heart of what our referendum debate is going to be all about. You know, can we control our borders? Can we do our utmost to stop people who may have terrorist connections from coming into Britain?
But wouldn't these people, some economic migrants, some asylum seekers, which we have a certain obligation to, a few maybe out to do us harm as well, surely we have an ability to control that, whether we're in or out of the EU.
But we have, if we're not members of the European Union, we can very clearly determine who comes to Britain and who can't. Once people have EU passports, even if they have a criminal record, we cannot stop people from coming into our country. And the real problem, of course, is, I mean, Hilary Benn was saying today, oh, well, everybody that arrives in Italy needs to be fingerprinted, but that doesn't tell you what conflict they've come from and whether they're part of a jihadist group. This is a real threat.
Should we have tougher surveillance? Should the intelligence services be given more powers?
I think they're going to have to be, I'm afraid. I'm always one that's fought against this, and provided there is judicial oversight, I'm comfortable with us going in that direction. I actually now believe that we're going to have to, at Dover, check every car and every lorry. I think the dream of free movement has now hit the buffers. I think security matters more. And I think we have to get back control of our borders.
Every car and every lorry would have to be stopped on the way in?
Well, either every car or every lorry, or a much higher percentage than we're currently checking.
Or a bigger random selection.
I drive through...
You drive mainly to...
I drive to Brussels and Strasbourg. I'm going through there at least a couple of times a month. I'm very rarely stopped and checked. And it's pretty obvious that I should be.
Should we be taking the fight to Islamic State, or is UKIP still opposed to any kind of military action?
I think that if we were to send the British Army to one particular country to take on Islamic State, that would achieve absolutely nothing. If there is to be a military strategy against this evil, and it is a new evil ideology, we have to remember that it's right across North Africa, it's in parts of the Middle East. We would need to do it in conjunction with those member state governments, and it would need to be a long, concerted campaign taking place on a broad canvas, and we would need to accept it might take us 20 years.
But you wouldn't rule that out if you had local allies?
If there was actually a plan, I would look at it. My anger with British foreign policy is, in 2011, we bombed Libya because we've decided suddenly Gaddafi's a bad guy without any thought as to what the consequences may be.
And of course Islamic State is now on the shores of the Mediterranean as a result.
Absolutely.
I want just finally to move on. Would you like to front up the out campaign for the referendum?
I'm rather attracted by this idea that was floated last week by a couple of businessmen, that they will set up a group, and that group will comprise businessmen, it'll comprise actors, comedians, retired military officers, and there won't be a single politician involved in it. And let's see who emerges from that.
But you still need a front man.
All I can tell you is this.
Would you like to be that front man?
All I can tell you is this. I am not prepared to sit and wait, and I cannot believe the position of the so-called Tory Eurosceptics who were saying wait and see. Cameron's dream of treaty change fell at this summit in Brussels last week. I will be, from the first week in September, on the road, touring the country. UKIP is united with the only organisation with a proper grassroots movement. We will play our bit.
And though, when it comes to that final big televised live debate with Mr. Cameron, we assume at the moment, arguing that he's done a renegotiation and we should stay in, who should be the one arguing to come out?
Well, whoever gets designated, the official no campaign, will make that decision. And if they asked me to do it, would I do it? Of course I would. But I hope somebody far better than me comes along.
I'm not sure. I was with you up until you said you hope somebody better. You would love to do it.
Well,
what's not to love for you?
I'd be very happy to do it. I had to go with Nick Clegg last year. I feel qualified to do it. But there may be somebody from outside the world of politics with no political baggage that can do an even better job and reach a bigger audience.
Do you accept, as someone once said just recently to me, that you're too divisive a character?
Well, I don't really buy that. You know, we've taken this party from nothing to winning the European elections, getting 4 million votes this year. We're not doing too badly.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much.